Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to make over some items and we're going to start with this canister set. And I got this canister set, well there's actually just two of them. And I got them at an estate sale this week. And I like the vintage look of them, but they're not old. So I'm just going to give them more of a cottage style. So I'm going to paint these lids, and anytime that I paint glass, I always use some sort of base coat. And I generally just use a Rust-Oleum clear matte finish and just spray it on. But I was out of that, and I like the way this product works. It's a Dixie Belle product, and it's called Slick Stick. So it always works really well for me. So I'm just going to brush some of that on, and I just do one coat and then let that coat dry, and then it's ready to paint. And the color that I'm going to put on these is a mixed Dixie Belle color. And if you've watched me long, you've seen me use this. I like the color Tea Rose, but it's a cooler pink, and apricot is just too peachy, so I mix that half and half and get this color, and I like the retro color that it gives, and I think it makes these look really cottage style. So I give this two coats of this color and then let that dry. And then once I let that dry, then I put a clear wax on these because I'm planning on using some brown glaze on these. And I'm always afraid that any glaze or dark wax will take too brown. So I like to put some sort of finish on it first. Sometimes I'll do a top coat, and sometimes I'll just do that clear wax. But the clear wax worked out well here. And so I just want a slight change in the color. I just want to warm this color up even more. And then once I finish these lids, then I can start on the jars. And I'm going to use a transfer on these jars. This is called Vintage Floral. It's a Dixie Belle transfer, and this has kind of a vintage look to it. So there's several different flowers here, and I guess they're designed to go on smaller projects, which I like because when I use the larger transfers, I usually try to cut them up anyway because I don't like to put a lot of transfer on one item because I just feel like it makes it too busy. So I just found a couple of flowers on here that I felt would go with this, and I just transfer some flowers and leaves on each of these jars. And I'm showing you the different designs that are in this one. I really like this one with the botanical look, and then of course I always like the black and white. So if you're gonna try a Dixie Belle transfer, this is a good one to start with because I feel like it's very versatile. So I just transfer those on the front of these jars, and then now I'm going to make a hang tag. I talked about making hang tags for all my items, and I've kind of slacked on that lately. I've just gotten busy, and I wanted to add some hang tags to this one. So I'm just going to start with this scrapbook paper here. And I like to layer my tags up because, for one thing, it makes them sturdier. But also it just adds to the look. And I like to use antique ink on around the edges so that you can see those layers well. You're not limited on materials that you can use because this is just some copy paper that I have coffee stained, and I'll just torn it, and I'm antiquing around the edges of this, and then I'm also antiquing around the edges of the back paper. Now you could do another layer even, but I just felt like with this one 2 was enough. And like I said, this step here makes a really big difference, just antiquing around those edges. And if you don't have the antiquing stamp, then you can always just use brown ink, or I've even used eyeshadow to darken around the edges. But this distress ink really does work well. So I'm just using a little glue stick and gluing this on, and then I'll stamp, or I'll punch a hole in it with my hole punch and tie a string on it, and that's all that there is to this, except I'm going to add a stamp here. So because this has flowers on it, then I'm just going to stamp a flower in the center, and then this one will be finished. I think that these hang tags will really be popular over the holidays, because anytime you're giving a gift, I just think, and getting it with a hang tag really makes it look more giftable. So I'm going to try to get some of these that I missed tagged, because I really do feel my customers so far have really liked them, and I've even had some to ask me if I would make one for an item that didn't have one. So I just put a string on this, and I just use ripped fabric here and then tied around one of the jars, and then this item is complete. And then for the next item, I thrifted this photo frame, and I'm not going to have to do much to this one because I like the look of it. It just needs something in it. And I don't sell these well as picture frames. I sell them much better if I put some art in them. So this one is going to be simple. I'm going to take some paper that I've coffee stained and added a little dye to. I was playing around with papers one day, and this is one that I kind of felt like was a mistake. But I decided to try it in this frame, and I think it ended up working out well. So it's got just enough pink on it, I think. And so all I'm going to do to this one is just cover that back. And I just did that with some glue stick. And now I'm using my antique wax and antiquing around the edges. And I not only antiqued around the edges, but I kind of feathered it inside too, so that some of this pink would be a warmer pink, and the whole paper would look more antiqued, because around those edges is not going to show that much. So I like the look that this gave. And now I'm just using this large stamp, and this is not one that I purchased on Amazon or Hobby Lobby. It's one that I thrifted, that I found at a thrift store. So I don't know where you can find these, but I lucked up in finding those, or this one. And now I'm making a hang tag for this. I'm using that same scrapbook paper because this is going to be a small vignette. So I'm antiquing around the edges of that. And I do front and back on this one because the back is going to show. But on this one, it's going to be glued on top, so I don't bother to antique on the back of this one. These hang tags are fun, but they're also super, super simple. So I'm just, like I said, layering one paper on top of the other, and punching a hole in it with my hole punch, and tying some sort of string, any kind of ripped fabric or lace, or even twine or jute will work. So I just glue that on, and because this one is going to go on the frame, and it's got flowers inside the frame, then I'm just going to put a little flower on this one also. Now I apologize that it's been a while since I posted. I actually tried to post yesterday, and if you were one of the few who watched that before I removed it, I'm very sorry about the sound. I don't know what was going on with my sound, but it was terrible. I mean, it was, I tried to overlook a couple of little things, and then and then it just got worse and worse, so I just removed it. So I'm sorry about that. This is that video, and I just removed all the sound and started over again. As you can see there, I put just a little sticker on the back that I'll put the price on for these items. But there is my frame finished. And like I said, I didn't have to do much at all to that. Now, I thrifted this clock. And I think that sticker says $4.99. But it's not an old clock at all. It actually had a sticker on the bottom that said Made in China. But it also didn't have any guts in it. It just had that face, and that face was really, really glued in. Someone really put some major glue inside that, so I had a hard time getting it out. But I finally managed to remove it because I'm not going to, this is not going to be a clock when it's finished. I'm just going to use it as some decor. So I'm putting 2 coats of the color buttercream on this. And then I also paint on the inside because some of that inside is going to be showing. So I paint 2 coats on inside and out of this piece and then let that dry well. And then once it dries, then I just take some fine grit sandpaper and distress on some of those high areas. And because this is kind of a cheaper wood, it's also soft, so it sands really well, and I was able to get distress without much sanding. Now, I thought about just treating this as a frame and putting that front back on with the glass and putting a stamp or something behind it. And then I decided it was wasting the space inside this, so I decided to make it some 3-dimensional art instead. And so because the back of this on the inside is going to show, then I want to cover it so that you don't see there's a door in the back. So I'm just stamping a bird on a piece of paper. And this is an old book page, so I'm just stamping that bird on there, and then I cut it somewhat the shape of the inside. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's not going to show completely. So I just cut it somewhat the shape, and now I'm going to take some tacky glue and just glue that inside. And then once I have that the back covered, then I'm going to take some Spanish moss and just kind of stuff it down in the bottom until I get enough that it fills that area in so that it looks like a nest. So this is essentially going to be a nest, but you don't really have to build it because you're just kind of stuffing it and it'll hold together on its own. So once I put enough of the Spanish moss in it, then I'm just going to add twigs and leaves and even let some of those come outside of the opening just to give it some more dimension. And nothing special here. I just add this and that until it has the look that I want, mostly leaves and twigs. I like nests in birds because I don't feel like they're limited to any certain season. I think they work well for spring, summer, fall, and winter. And you're not limited on what you can put in here very much because, like I said, you can just use twigs and leaves, and you can use either fake flowers or even real dried flowers. So, like I said, this is just what you want to put in here. I would just stick with more natural items. But I just cut little pieces off picks and until I get the look that I want. Now, I felt like this opening needed something, and I couldn't put the glass back in it because I couldn't remove the glass and then put just the rim around the edge back in because it had so much glue that was just really hard to get off. So I found this coaster that was glass on the inside, and I just took that glass out. I ended up having to break it out But I took that out, and now I'm just going to paint that the same color as the clock. And then I will use some tacky glue and glue that in. I could have used hot glue. Maybe Gorilla Glue would have been a better choice, but I don't think it's going to take a lot to hold that in, so I just used tacky glue. But as you can see, just that little coaster made a really big difference in this. It made it look more finished. So now I'm going to do a Christmas ornament. And I mentioned a couple of times before that I'm going to have to get started on some of my Christmas. And I know it's so early for you guys. It's actually late for me. I'm way behind. But what I've decided to do, so I don't just really wear you guys out with all the Christmas, I've just decided to add one to the end of each of my videos. So this one I'm using just regular tissue paper rolls. And if you've ever seen the Tin Can Posy craft, I actually did one in one of my videos. They just take a can and open the top of it and the bottom for the ones who can be opened on the bottom. And then you smush the bottom with a hammer, and then it stays closed. But obviously this is going to be much easier because we're just going to have to hot glue that closed, and then it kind of mimics that same look. So I just decided, I was looking at some tissue paper rolls and decided that I could surely make something out of those, and I thought of that tin can craft. I don't know if these have been done before. I haven't seen them, but I would think that they are done because it seems like such a simple idea. So all I'm going to do, I could paint these, I could decoupage over them, but for this one I'm just going to glue some fabric around it. So I just take a strip of fabric and rip it the width that I need. And I don't worry about it being perfect. And it actually has a little bit on the back that isn't covered completely, and that's okay, a little strip around the top. But that's okay because I'm going to be adding trim to both the top and the bottom. So don't worry about getting this exact. Like I said, just ripping it is easier for me, and so I just rip it instead of trying to cut it exact. So I just glue this on with some hot glue, and I like to make sure that my seam is in the back. Now, if I were going to glue something over the top or over the front of this, then I could let the seam be in the front, and then cover it up with whatever embellishment I put on it. But I'm only going to be embellishing a part of the front, so I didn't want any of that seam showing. So I just take some hot glue around the top and the bottom, and then down that seam in the back, and this is very easy to cover. Now I do recommend using thin fabric because a thicker, bulkier fabric would be harder to deal with. But once I get this covered, then I'm just going to start to embellish it. And it doesn't take much because this is a small ornament. And I'm sorry I'm getting out of frame here. But this is a small ornament, so it doesn't take much to embellish it. And so I'm just going to take some of the lace that you get at the Dollar Tree. I'm sure most of you all have seen it. I love that lace because it's a cotton lace, and I like cotton lace, and it's also narrow, so it works well to add to trim out items just to make them look more finished. So I'm just going to glue some around the top and some around the bottom. Now you could also use paper towel rolls on this and just cut them in half and make make a couple. You might even be able to get 3 out of one, but you could at least get 2. So it's not hard at all to find the material for this because you can use scraps on the rest of it. And I have also been told that Hobby Lobby sells tissue paper rolls even in different colors, which I guess I don't understand myself because we go through so much tissue paper, it seems. So I'm never without tissue paper rolls to craft with. So this is another stamp that I thrifted, and I'm sorry that I can't tell you where to get a lot of these because I do thrift so many of my stamps. But this one says Christmas Blessings, and I really like it because of the size. It works real well for my ornaments. So I've torn a piece of tea towel that I've coffee stained, and it rips very easy. So I ripped a strip just to go down the middle of or around the middle of this. And how wide you go is completely up to you because you can create whatever look you want here. So what I like about these is they are so versatile. Like I said, first of all, they can be made out of your scraps. But also you can make them look as shabby chic as you want, as primitive even as you want, or as farmhouse style. I think these could be made any kind of style that you wanted them. You can even go more modern on these. So I just cut that in the back and glue that seam down, and then this one is ready to put a hanger on. And for the hanger, I'm just going to take a strip of any kind of fabric. You could use lace here, or just any kind of ripped fabric. So I just take a piece that is the length that I want, leaving room to tie a knot in each end, and then I just glue that knot on the sides because I really like the look of that fabric just hanging down below the knot. And that's all that there is to these, except that you can fill them with whatever you want. You could put candy canes in them, or like me, I just put some Christmas greenery and some berries in this one. And so now I'm going to do one more just to show you a little different style. And on this one, I'm going to use scrapbook paper. And this just has some gingerbread on it. So I'm going to cut the scrapbook paper and just cover it just like I did with the cloth. And here you could use tacky glue, or you could still use hot glue here. And I think I just used hot glue because I wanted it to go quicker for the video. And again, this scrapbook paper I thrifted, and someone had already cut some off of it, but they did it in this scalloped pattern. So I just decided to go ahead and work with that scalloped pattern because it makes me think of a gingerbread man anyway. So I'm just going to put the scalloped edge around the top and just go ahead and go with that. So I just glue my paper or my tissue paper roll together like I did the other one, and now I'm just going to cover this with this scrapbook paper. And I'm speeding this one up because I think it's very simple to do. And watching the first one, it's obvious what to do on the second one. You're just going to cover that, and I'm taking for my piece down the center of this one, I'm just using some aged paper, and it's just some paper that I've coffee stained and antiqued around the edges. And now I'm just going to glue that in the center. But I took a gingerbread stamp and just stamped a gingerbread image on the front, and then just wrap that around the can. And then for this one, for the trim, I'm using this jute trim that I got at the Dollar Tree also, and just gluing that around the top and the bottom. And I felt like that had more of a gingerbread look to it again, so I just thought that was a good trim to use on this. So I glued around the top and the bottom. I think this twine is a really good, or this trim is a really good value. And I buy it often because it really works well for trimming out, especially ornaments like this. And then for this one, I'm not going to use lace as the hanger on this one. I'm going to rip a piece of red and white striped fabric that I have tea stained, and tied the knot in and glued it on the sides just like I did the other one. And a little greenery in this one, and this one is finished. And so here are all the ones, or some of the ones that I've done this year. And I was just going to show you the different looks that you can get out of these. So on a couple of these, I used some vintage clip art that I downloaded free from the Graphics Fairy. And then there's one of my paper flowers and book pages. But you can just give these any look that you want. And I would even think that you could make these a little bit larger and a little more sturdy by using maybe a Pringles can, or a very large one, maybe using an oatmeal box. But like I said, just get creative with these, because there's really not much limit with them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next. Have a great evening, and God bless you and your family.